There are so many women in perimenopause, menopause, and beyond who know something feels off, but keep getting told that what they're experiencing is just normal for their age. And that could be such a confusing place to live because when your body is changing, your energy is shifting, your sleep is off, your mood feels different, your weight is changing, and you're not getting clear answers. It's so easy to start doubting yourself. But the truth is, this season of your life does not have to be something that women just survive. It can also be a season of understanding your body more deeply, asking better questions, getting more informed support, and making empowered decisions about what your body may actually need. And that's exactly why I'm excited for today's conversation. Okay,
Mhm.
today I'm joined by Cindy DuPuie, functional medicine nutritionist and founder of A Living Balance. Cindy has been in the functional medicine space since 2008 and shares that she has worked in the perimenopause and menopause space for over 20 years. She's helped women better understand their bodies, their lab work, and the lifestyle and hormone support options available to them in this transition. So, in this episode, we're talking about menopause and beyond, how to think about reading labs, and what women should consider when it comes to hormone replacement therapy. So, Cindy, welcome. I'm glad that you
Thank
are
you.
here today.
Thank you, thank you. I am
So,
glad to
for
be here as well. Yeah.
good. For those who may be meeting you for the first time, can you share a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
Sure. So, my name's Cindy DuPuie, and I have been in the functional medicine space, as Lindsay said, for over 20 years. And I'm going to make one little correction, okay?
Okay,
And
go for it.
that is, I have not been helping menopausal women for 20 years. But I have been in the menopausal space personally for 25 years. So me helping women in the pause space has been about 5 to 6 years. And I'll tell you a little bit how I got there. Um, I have my degree in dietetics food administration from like 40 plus years ago. Didn't really do anything about it with it. And then when I was in my early 40s, I went through a divorce. I was a mess and my digestive system was a mess. I threw myself into menopause at the young age of 43. And I did that through just all the stress and I lost too much weight. My body says, well, yeah, we're just not going to make any more hormones. Thank you very much. And when things kind of went back to where they were supposed to be, my body just said, we're done. So, I went from being normal to being in menopause, I think within about a 2, 3 month period. So mine was really quick. And we were really talking about menopause and perimenopause, 25 years ago. It just wasn't being talked about. So I have built a practice of helping clients, both men and women, in the functional medicine space, which means I treat the whole body, right? We have all these specialists, all these ologists that are segmented, siloed, right? Everything is siloed in our bodies, but that's not how our bodies work. So I help people with a lot of different things. The gut and digestion is one of my favorite areas. It's my weakest area. And I know how debilitating that can be, but labs, thyroids, all that. Um, and then I moved into the menopause space, like I said, about 5 or 6 years ago, because I was watching my clients who had moved into menopause. They'd been with me for a long time. I knew how they ate. I knew their lifestyle. I knew that they were doing a lot of mostly the right things, right? They might not be perfect. Who's perfect? If you are, I don't think I can associate with you. But anyway, um, I was I was watching them lose ground. And I was watching my contemporaries, their quality of life was lessening. And I thought, you know what? There is a piece here that I really need to investigate in order to help my women because I'm not liking what I was seeing. And I was really fortunate because When I went into menopause, that was right when the infamous Women's Health Initiative had come out. The results from that, the erroneous results, unfortunately, had just come out. And I didn't know anything, right? And about 7 years after that, 7 years into me being in menopause, one of my doctors put me on hormone replacement. I didn't ask for it. She just knew better and she decided to put me on, and I went, okay. And it was a very low dose, which is what was the norm back then. It still can be, unfortunately. And it was a bias, which again was how everything was packaged back then. So it was estradiol and estriol. And estriol is a weak
Mhm.
form of estrogen, but that's how they did it. So anyway, I was on that form of hormone replacement until about 3 or 4 years ago. Then I made the move and I experimented and I changed something. So that's kind of my journey into the perimenopause and menopause space. And it's a fun journey. And I am here to support my women because they are not being supported.
So, why is it especially important that in this season of life, women become their own advocates?
Because there is so much conflicting information out there, and doctors have not been educated. You need to understand, women need to understand this. I mean, it's so frustrating when you go into a doctor's office and you want to discuss perimenopause and menopause, and they will shut you down. They have not been educated because of the WHI study. Teaching about perimenopause and menopause and hormones was no longer part of the curriculum. Okay, it was done. So unless a doctor has gone out on their own to learn about perimenopause and menopause and hormones, they're way behind the eight ball. And there's two big organizations, I would say, that the US doctors anyway would refer to, and that's ACOG, and that's for gynecology, and an obstetrician, and then the what used to be called the North American Menopause Society. The Menopause Society is, a little more focused on menopause, right? So, they're a little bit more advanced than ACOG, but, they're still very conservative. But their last, statement, that the HRT menopause statement that came out, I believe in 2022, was the last official one, really did shift from where things had been even 10 years prior. So basically, what it is you need to understand that the doctors are not educated, they don't know. Okay. So it is up to you to educate yourselves and to know what you want to ask for. And oftentimes, unfortunately, you will have to move on to a different doctor. I'm in that position right now myself. Okay. And I know, I have a client who just complained to me. And her complaint was, her doctor is giving her hormone replacement. It wasn't the right thing for her. And so I've been coaching her on to what to ask for. And this has been, 2 or 3 year period where things have switched. And she says she just gets so frustrated. Why can't she just go into a doctor and they know what they're doing? And I said, unfortunately, that isn't the case. So I'm sorry. You have me. So you need to have at least one or two other people in your camp. And thus, you do need to educate yourself, at least to a certain degree as well. Sorry.
Yeah, and I say that all the time. Actually, right before this episode, we had a PA on, and I asked her about the nutrition component of becoming a PA or becoming an MD. And I have always been taught that there is no nutrition component in the 4 to 8 years that you become a doctor. So when people come to me and they're like, "Hey, like my doctor said that I need to do this, 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 and this," it's like, okay, but you don't need to be like on all of these pills necessary for the rest of your life if you do this, this, and this with nutrition. Like nutrition plays such a huge part. It's actually concerning that we aren't taught those things, and that, like you said, many doctors who do the functional medicine component or who do more nutrition, they've had to go out and learn that on their own because they're just taught, if you have high blood pressure, like don't eat this, and this. And then like that's the extent of the knowledge of nutrition. And nutrition is everything to our cellular components and hormones and all the things. So yes,
It
everyone
is.
does definitely need that roundabout team for them.
Yeah. Yep. 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 And everyone on social media, whichever one is, right? You're going to be hearing different things about what the right nutrition is and what the right supplements are. So you need someone that can look at you, look at your labs and go, okay, this is what you need to do. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's go back to like what I said in the beginning, where women are told that their symptoms are just a part of aging. And like you said too, they kind of get this dismissal about the menopausal part or even perimenopause. So, what do you wish more women understood about what they're actually changing into or transitioning into?
What I really would like women to know are all the roles that estrogen, progesterone, and even testosterone plays in our body. Okay. We think of these sex hormones as important during our fertile years. Okay. It isn't just to make babies. It isn't just to ovulate and have a period. Okay. There are so many different functions of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone that unless you know what they are, it's really hard to grasp what happens when a woman loses her hormones, okay? The cascade that that happens can happen, and every woman is different, but your estrogen in particular affects every single cell and organ system in your body. So that means it affects your bones. It affects your heart. It affects your blood vessels. It affects your digestive system. It can affect your thyroid, um, inflammation, your ability to stay metabolically healthy. So every single thing you could possibly think of, right? Your hormones are playing a role here. So to me, that's the most important thing to understand. Our heads, okay, Alzheimer's, our moods, the way our brains operate, um, all of that plays a role. And I know that there are some women who move into perimenopause and menopause with very few of the regular symptoms, right? Of, let's say, anxiety or depression, or they can't sleep, or night sweats, you lose your libido, all of that. Some women kind of just float into it and through it. And that's great. And I would say those women probably have a leg up as far as their nutrition, as far as maybe even genetics, as far as their lifestyle. They just kind of had it together before they went into perimenopause, which for all your young ladies who are listening, it is important to start working on it now, not to wait till you're in that position. And, adrenal function's really, really important during that time too. What would I like them to know is I want you to understand, it's really important to understand all the roles so that you can understand what's happening to your body. And it's not necessarily normal. Okay. Um, it's common and there's a lot that you can do about it. And I have some women that say, I want to do this all naturally. As long as you feel good, you're not in a bunch of pain and you're moving along great. Your bones are staying where they're supposed to be. You go for it, okay? I am not gonna try to fix something that isn't broken, all right? But you need to educate yourselves.
Yeah. So going back to some of the symptoms that you just mentioned, what are some of the common symptoms that maybe women dismiss or they normalize, but they're actually real signs that they need to start looking into some support?
The obvious ones that most people know that they're going into perimenopause and menopause would be hot flashes, would be the insomnia, would be possibly Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of behavior and moods that happens. The loss of libido, vaginal dryness. I mean, these are all, I think, the brain fog. You can't have their retrieval, right? I think those are things that are common, but things that are less common would be, or even the weight gain too. But the reason as to why we have the weight gain, women might not know. Your cholesterol will go up. Okay. A lot of women don't realize that that's a natural part of what our body is doing is we start losing these hormones, because a lot of women don't realize that cholesterol is the backbone of our sex hormones. So as our body starts to lose these, it'll want to make more cholesterol so that it can try to make more of those hormones. That's one reason. There's another reason. And as we lose these hormones, our inflammation goes up. It just does. Even if we're eating well, I mean, that's still a very important part of it. But our inflammation will go up. As our inflammation go up, our quote unquote bad cholesterol, your LDL, will also go up in response to that inflammation. Another reason why our cholesterol can go up is thyroid's a big part of the production of cholesterol in our liver. And so often our thyroid will shift when, again, going into perimenopause and menopause. Autoimmune disease will also shift. So these are things that women don't realize. Okay, it's a natural thing for cholesterol. Do not be put on a statin, ladies. Okay, it's not cholesterol that gives us heart disease. It's inflammatory markers, which you could probably get into a little bit more when we talk about labs. The other thing that women don't realize is our skin can really start changing. Our the aches and pains. It's not because we're getting older. It's because we're losing that wonderful juiciness, if you will, that estrogen gives us. The other thing that people don't realize is that, again, estrogen affects every system and organ in our system or in our body, including the digestive system. And some women will be hit by that, some women won't. I am hit by it. And I also have a gene that I learned after the fact that makes it difficult for me to produce something called choline and bile, which has to do with digestion, with skin, with, the peristalsis, removing toxins, everything that you can think about when it comes to making bile. I have a gene snip where that's an issue for me. And then when estrogen drops, that becomes a bigger issue. So you need to have support. So these are things that women don't think about. Ringing in the ears,
Yeah.
tinnitus can be an issue too. Dry eyes can be an issue. So the list goes on.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, you're fine. It is a list. So yeah. But it goes back to what you said, like hormones are just that important to all of the functionalities. Like that's why the list is the way that it is. So when women start feeling off, let's say, and like you said too, I personally see a lot more women who are now younger than what used to be normal, now starting to get into menopause. So I think normally, and you can correct me on this, but I think normally we would see it like mid 40s ish into your 50s. And I think now we're starting to actually see it more towards your late 30s, mid 40s instead. So you can correct me on that. But the question is, what are some of the first things that they should be looking at?
I'm not going to correct you on that because I do think that there is a shift, but I'm going to caution. Okay. And the caution is sometimes signs of perimenopause can actually be signs of hypothyroidism. And doctors do not do an adequate thyroid panel to really figure that out. Okay. It can also be a problem with our nutrients and specifically with zinc, with iron, and with ferritin, which is your storage form of iron. So those can all play into it. Your adrenal fatigue. So I do think that we are seeing it younger, partially. I feel so sorry for you guys. Because I feel that you guys have so much more stress than, let's say, I did. I mean, I have 2 kids. I didn't work full time. I worked part time, but I don't think I had quite the load that you have. And that load is extremely taxing on the body. So I want to take all of you and say, You all have to work part-time. If I could do the perfect world, it would be that. It's like, here's some money. You all work
Yeah.
part-time, do whatever you want
Yeah.
to do. But to try to run a household, your kids and everything else, it's like, you got to be kidding me. So having said that, and I know we're going to kind of move into this, but you do need to get really, really, really good lab work. So you know what's going on. So you know where you need to support yourself. And there are some doctors, and I'm not necessarily opposed to this, but I'm opposed to it if there isn't thorough lab work and someone who knows what the heck they're doing on how to read it. And when I say that, I mean looking at a person's history, looking at the person in front of them, connecting the dots, and really knowing what is going on for that woman. Too many times, if a doctor is willing to give someone in perimenopause hormones, okay, and again, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, they're missing the thyroid piece, the ferritin piece, the adrenal piece. They're missing all of that and an opportunity to support a woman where she needs to be supported at that point in time. Okay. And with diet and everything else. So, the environmental toxic exposure, the diet, the stress, all of that, I think is why we're seeing at least the signs of women going into perimenopause earlier. My preference would be before I put a woman or suggest that she go on HRT if she's, below the age of 43. Of course, it depends on what's going on. Of course, really, really good lab work, but then supporting her with a specific type of maca, which if it's the right kind, okay, from the right company, that I really trust. What will happen is it will support her hormones and her adrenals. Okay. It's not giving her hormones, but it will support the adrenal thyroid axis. Okay. In a very natural way and more of an adaptogenic way. So, how the body needs it. So, that's what I would say if a woman finds herself going into perimenopause early. Those are the things that I would look at.
Okay, so let's talk about that some more too. How can lab work help women get a clearer picture on what's going on beneath the surface? Like, what kind of labs should we be doing, and what kind of markers do you feel like are especially important to be looking at?
Okay, so I know that in your show notes, you're going to be giving a link for your audience to be able to download my lab checklist for the pause years. And so I'll kind of go off of that. I mean, that's a really good tool for you because it lists everything that I recommend, why, and how to ask for it. Okay, because you're probably going to get some pushback. So there are 6 basic labs or sets of panels that I recommend. And the first one would be a complete thyroid workup. TSH is not complete. Thyroid stimulating hormone is not complete. TSH with T4 is not complete. You must have free T3. Okay. You must have thyroid antibodies just to see if there is an autoimmune like Hashimoto's or perhaps Graves going on. And then this last one's pretty hard to get, but I would highly recommend that maybe you get it on your own, and that is reverse T3. And the reason being is that we can have adequate amounts of T4, which is basically the hormone that your thyroid makes, and then it has to be converted into T3. That's why it's so important to have T3 measure, not just T4, because we don't know if your body is able to convert that T4 to T3. And if it's not, you're kind of stuck here. And if your body is in that continuous fight or flight or very inflammatory state, then that T4 will be converted a lot to reverse T3, which is an inactive form of T3. So we need to see that. So that's a piece of the puzzle of how to support you. Okay, so that's thyroid. And then the next one would be probably your nutrients. And these are nutrients that are easy to get. Okay, they shouldn't cost an arm and a leg. That would obviously be vitamin D. You need to ask for that. Everyone needs to know it's so important on so many different levels. Some doctors will test for B12 and folate. I don't particularly like that because it doesn't tell us how well these nutrients are getting into your body. So I like to test something called homocysteine, which is kind of a back-ended way of looking at folate and B12 status. So homocysteine would be there. Your iron, okay? So your iron levels, your iron saturation levels, your transferrin levels, and then ferritin too, which is actually separate from your iron panel, but that needs to be looked at. I often will see ferritin levels low, but iron status fine. Okay. And so you can't, some doctors, I see them, they'll just look at the ferritin levels. It's like, no, 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 no. I got to see what the iron levels are in order to get the whole picture, right? And there's many reasons why ferritin levels can be low. And it doesn't mean that they need more iron. And lots of times doctors will just throw more iron at somebody. It's like, no, 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 no. We don't want to do that. And what is the other magnesium, but it needs to be RBC magnesium, not just straight serum magnesium. It needs specifically to be RBC magnesium. It's nice to see your omegas. It's not on my list, but it's nice to see that as well. There seems to be one more that I'm missing, but I can't think of what it is right now. But that's important. And then, looking at your lipid panel, I actually could kind of care less about your cholesterol per se, because again, it's your inflammation, what's going on in your body that drives heart disease. And homocysteine actually is the driver of heart disease. But I do like to see it because I like to see what your triglycerides are, and that's part of your lipid panel. And the triglycerides are a really good indication of how well your body's handling your sugars and your carbohydrates, right? Then a metabolic panel would be your A1C. A lot of people, doctors do glucose, A1C. A1C is basically an average of where your glucose levels are over a 3-month period. I'll bet you every single one of your listeners here have never had their insulin levels tested. And that's a problem. Insulin is way more important than your glucose. Okay? Yeah, yeah. And usually we'll see that creeping up at least 10 years before your A1C will be creeping up, because your body is such a magnificent machine. It will do whatever it needs to do in order to keep your blood sugar levels even, no matter what you're eating, no matter what your stress level is, for as long as it possibly can until it can't. And the insulin levels will keep on going up in your body's effort in order to keep it level. So looking at insulin is super important. The triglycerides, again, are super important. I already mentioned A1C. That's important. So that would be your metabolic panel. And then your doctors are going to do, your standard CBC, standard CMPs. And I used to say this, but I still kind of say this. Those are not going to be way off unless you're pretty sick. Okay. Now, sometimes I'll see, happened to me just recently. It was a wake up call for me, actually. I should know better, but we all get little reminders. It's like, whoops, I knew I was out of whack, but oops, look at this. And so sometimes your sodium and potassium, and your body wants a really, really tight rein on that. So the range is tight. If we got a lot of adrenal stuff going on, we can see that start moving, not in a direction we want. Okay. So you will see on your labs, what else am I missing here? That's, I think, 5 or 6 of them. If I am missing it, download that. Download the guide and you'll see it. And I think it's important to establish that there's a difference between normal ranges and optimal ranges. Okay. And we have to realize where this data is taken from. It's taken from everyone who gives blood, right?
Mhm.
And if we think about the people who give blood the most, they're probably the sickest people and they're probably older, right? So your normal maybe might not be where you want to be. Okay. And having said that, again, we need to connect the dots within the lab panel, and we need to know what our normal is. Okay. Because sometimes what would be optimal, and do I list optimal in that one? I think I do. I have a couple different lab checklists. Um, what is optimal for one person may not be optimal for another. And that's why it's really important for us to know what your pattern is. It's really important for us to talk to the person that is in front of us. How many times does your doctor call you or the nurse practitioner call you and say your labs look fine and you're done? Too many times it happens. And and I'll even use myself as an example. My thyroid is not optimal. My thyroid hormones are not optimal. They tend to run a little bit low, but they have run this way for 10 years. I have little signs, but I'm fine. Okay. So again, we have to look at the person and look at their history. So yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that answers. Okay.
Yeah, it, it does. And like you said, I'll put the link in the show notes so they can go get that outline and see, exactly what they're looking for. And I like that you said that, what that optimal range is and considered normal may not actually be your specific normal. Another thing with that too is sometimes things do look normal, but maybe one or two things are off. But the doctors will be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Just do ABC
Mm-hmm.
type thing." But in actuality, it might be normal, but on the low end for something, or it might be normal, but on the higher end. And then when you combine all of those things together and look at the bigger picture, it actually indicates that there is something actually wrong. But because it came back as normal, it's often just pushed off the table. So I'm glad that you said that for sure. Um,
Yes,
so
and
go
just
ahead.
can I just say two quick things? One
Yeah, go
is
ahead.
if you're not feeling right, okay, and your labs come back normal, you need to dig farther or find someone who will dig farther with you. That's number one, okay? Because you want to catch it now. It doesn't get better if you let it go. Number one. Number two, I know some people and doctors too will test hormones when you're in perimenopause. Really? They're all over the place from day to day, from hour to hour. So that's one thing I don't do. I don't test estrogen, progesterone because yeah, yeah. So that's one thing I don't do during perimenopause. During menopause, I do, especially if you're on HRT. I do. I think it's really important. Some
And
doctors don't test.
yeah, and rightfully so. And even if we go to test things like cortisol, like your cortisols are going like this, like all day long. So if you just go in and like, hey, I want my cortisol checked, that's just boom, 1 point on the dot. Like you should be testing it throughout the day and have multiple test points. And it would be even better if you had multiple test points throughout the week as well. And then that really, because hormones fluctuate all the time. So that's what I tell
They
people
do.
too is like if you really want to get a clear panel, like make sure you're doing these multiple testing, not just this one set point test.
You are so right. You are so right. Yeah.
So, okay, well, we just hit on this next question, so I'll go to the next one. What are some common mistakes that we see when women try to like interpret the things themselves?
How you can interpret them yourselves, because I have spent a lot of time learning how to interpret them, and with my I learn from my clients every day. Okay, some of the mistakes I would say is that you compare yourself to what the normal is, what the optimal is, and you're not connecting the dots. I don't know how you would know how to connect the dots unless you really do know, about lab work. Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of women
What
will
do you
go
find?
Google it. Yeah.
Oh,
A
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
women will go Google it, or they'll talk to their friends about it who have had it done, or they will use Chat GPT now to figure these things out. So like those type of people who are like, oh, well, I got this back. I'm just going to plug it all into the internet and see what it comes back and says. Like, what are some things that they might not be, they might be making a mistake by doing that.
Okay. Lindsey, you're so smart. That was perfect. That was perfect because it happens all the time. They're not going, first of all, AI and chat, they are not going to necessarily be putting the patterns together. And they're not going to be asking your symptoms. I mean, if you know how to ask the right questions, you might get kind of close, but you got to know. You got to know what to ask. I mean, I just went through a whole thing. I'll be honest with you, with chat about ferritin. I mean, not funny. I spent with
Yeah.
chat about at least a half an hour, but I knew the specific questions to ask to get the answer. And then I went deeper and deeper, right? And that's one of the problems with, I'm sure you've heard of Function Health. Yeah. It's one of Mark Hyman's. It's a great deal. It really and truly is to get a ton of lab work done. They do a great job. I can't beat them. I can get close, but I can't beat them. And the problem is they have AI give you a report. Now, the AI is more based on the optimal ranges, but it's still AI. It is not looking at you. So you can't Google it, you guys. You can't talk to your friends. It doesn't work. Yeah.
I'm sure
Go on.
with his
Sorry.
program too, like I love Dr. Mark so much, but I'm sure with
I
his
do.
program too, there's some like caveat to that, like, okay, here we're gonna give you this ballpark, very close probably range on what's going on, but then you need to follow up with something else, either with him or with his people, or some I'm sure there's some follow up to whatever those results are.
There hasn't been in the past, and they may have changed it now, but basically it was pretty clean. I mean, I know there's a lot of companies out there that will give you a bunch of supplements, and I do have an issue with that. So ladies, if you get any stool test, and there's some stool tests out there too, the same thing. And I have some of my clients come in and I'm like, really? Yeah. So they are selling you something. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but the way that this is happening and the way the companies are doing it and the amount that they're selling, yeah, there's an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, when I started out in this, I was following a different doctor and I loved their content and things. And then the past, I don't know, maybe 2 years now, they did the whole AI thing and now they're like selling more of their stuff. And I'm like, I actually completely unfollowed them because they just went too far off the tracks from where the functional medicine line lies. And I was like, now you're getting
Mm-hmm.
into bigger production stuff, and I'm like, this
Yeah.
isn't, now you're giving false information, and it's like now I can't support that. So I
Yeah.
that happens,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately that does
It
happen. So
does. It
just
does. It does.
be aware of all the information,
Yeah.
like you said earlier, that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Really good point.
Yeah. um let's see, are there any specific questions that we should be asking our doctors when we do review lab work with them?
I'm laughing because you can look, let's say something's out of range, right? Or you're not feeling well and they're really not addressing it. You can probe a little bit farther with them, but my experience has been that 70 to 80% of the time, you're not really going to get satisfactory answers or guidance. And this is where we go back to, you need to have someone or a couple people in your court that that you can get a second opinion on. So then you can go back and ask specifically. And I find some doctors can be really good about that, and some are just horrible. And, we're really fortunate in the US that we can order the labs that we want. We have access to our lab work. We didn't really, 15 years ago. And so that is definitely a plus and puts us more in the driver's seat. But I mean, you can have a discussion. Most doctors, especially if you're in an HMO or if they take insurance, it's going to be a quick in and out. And that's just the way our medical system works. If you're paying out of pocket, paying for a concierge, you will get more time and attention. And, and ask, what do they think is the cause of this? What can we do? Can we maybe test something else? So you can probe, but I would say probably 70% of the doctors that we go to, that is not going to happen unless you know specifically what to ask for. And even then, that's just the way it is, ladies.
Fortunately.
Unfortunately,
Hey,
yes.
if it, yeah, yeah. If anybody is listening to this and this conversation has resonated with you so far, we do have the resources in the show notes below, but I did want to insert here if you're looking for just a way to get started on the whole healing journey in and of itself. You're looking for something slower, more supportive, things like that, then I wanted to just invite you guys to go check out my free 7-day morning rituals blueprint, because setting your day up for success really does start in that early morning. And I have 5 to 7 tips for you guys in there that you can habit stack throughout the week and make it just part of your everyday routine. There is a very gentle first step to help you reconnect with your body, supporting your nervous system, and really creating more intention in the way that you begin your day. So you guys can check that out at lindsayalexis.co/7-day morning ritual, all with dashes through it, but it is also in the show notes below. So, Cindy, can we talk about hormone replacement therapy now?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a big topic.
It is. It is.
How many hours do you have?
So
Okay.
it can. This is a very loaded topic, like you mentioned, the women's study that came out and all the stuff that they said and did and issues with all of that, and then there's like bad and good sides and all kinds. It's a very heated debate lots of times. So from your perspective, what do you wish women understood first before making any assumptions about anything that's happened previously with this stuff?
First two things. Well, actually, three things which we've already touched on. And one is having an understanding of what our hormones actually do in our bodies other than for procreation. Okay. That's number one, because then you'll have a broader understanding. I think that's really important. Number two, we need to understand that the Women's Health Initiative, the WHI study, has been backpedaling ever since the findings that came out that they published that HRT causes cancer. Okay. And women need to know that the hormones that were used in the WHI study were not bioidentical. Okay. The estrogen was oral. It was not transdermal, which, if you ever run into a doctor who doesn't use bioidentical, run as quickly as you possibly can. And there are still some doctors that use the old stuff. It's like, really? And that can be more inflammatory. And the type of progesterone that the WHI study used was something called progestins. Okay. And a progestin is not bioidentical either. And that was the issue, not just the estrogen group. It was the group with the estrogen and the progestin. Okay. We don't use progestin. So you need to understand that the study, even though again, they've been backpedaling the results ever since, debunking it ever since, reframing it ever since, they were not bioidentical and the estrogen was oral. So that's number one. Okay. Number two is because there hasn't been any big clinical trials because it costs a lot of money. All we kind of have are clinical. In other words, what doctors have found with their clients, we have these big published studies that say that a woman can continue to take estrogen after 10 years. There's still that narrative where a woman, in fact, I just ran into it. I'm 68. I have been on HRT for 28 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I am probably the healthiest patient this darn doctor has, not on any medication other than HRT. And she wants to pull me from my HRT. And I
Oh.
said, I don't think so. Oh, yeah. Okay. Can you imagine? And so that's a real issue. And so women are being refused HRT and taken off their HRT after a certain amount of time. Women are still being underdosed. Okay. And I want women to know that you do need patience with HRT. Okay. Because what one woman does well on, another woman might not. And I do think it's really important to have blood work done after you start a HRT, because we need to know whether or not your body is absorbing if you're on the patch. Okay. We need to know how well your body, maybe you're a hyperabsorber, maybe you don't absorb it very well. So one of the things that is still kind of in the conversation, which I think is incorrect, is that women should only be on HRT for maybe 10 years and then they need to come off of it. And if you think about it, it's like, well, all the things that estrogen does for us, progesterone does for us, and testosterone does for us, that doesn't go away. So, if we've been on HRT and we're healthy and we're happy and it's working, why go off of it? Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I know better. I know better. And I have clients who come in who are in their 70s, and you have to realize that, I know there's so much talk about it right now, but for about 15, 20 years, there was no talk about it. There was no opportunity. So there are women who are in their 70s and their 80s who've never, ever had a conversation with their doctors, have not been on HRT. They have osteoporosis. They have repeated UTIs. They have all this stuff, and they're not being supported. And many doctors will not put a woman who is past the 10 years mark after going to menopause onto hormone replacement because they're worried about the stroke risk. Okay. And that again comes from the oral progestins and oral estradiol. Okay. Not the transdermal estradiol and not the bioidentical progesterone. So, on the old stuff, I understand it, but that's not what we're using here. And so I get really, really frustrated when my women can't get the help that they need. And every woman, even if you've had cancer before, okay, should have available to her, if she so chooses, vaginal estrogen, because UTIs are such a problem for older women, and they repeat themselves, and they are on antibiotics, so that messes up their gut. And many times older women don't even realize that they have a UTI, and that can go to their brains, and that can really do a number on their kidneys as well. So, having a dry vagina and having the tissue not be healthy is just, and when we lose our estrogen, it changes the bacteria down there too. It just does. And so we're going to be more prone to UTIs. So I guess what I want women to take away is don't take no for an answer. There are many doctors out there who do know better. Often you will have to pay out of pocket, unfortunately. Put a little bit of money aside. It's well worth it if that's what you want. If that's what you want. I also want women to know that estrogen was approved by the FDA to prevent and reverse, I shouldn't say reverse, although it can help be part of that, osteoporosis, back in 1975, okay, long time ago. And once the Women's Health Initiative came out, that study came out, all of a sudden Boniva, which is a type of biphosphonate, but the brand was Boniva, and this is really aging myself, but the flying nun, Sally Fields, she was a spokesperson for it. And that came out right in 2003, right when the Women's Health Initiative. So all of a sudden we went from estrogen as something natural. Okay. People say, well, I want to do everything naturally. These are bioidentical. These are the same as what's in your body. And, they are natural in my opinion, but so many women are never even offered a conversation about taking estrogen for bones and other things as well. So I don't know if I covered that whole question. There's so much to talk about there. So we do need testing. We do need to advocate for ourselves. We do need to find doctors who will be willing to keep us on HRT and supply that to us, and maybe even start us later. Vaginal estrogen, there shouldn't even be a no anywhere in that conversation. I don't care how old a woman is when she goes into perimenopause and menopause. And testing is important. Be patient, because sometimes it can take a little while to figure out what works for you. Okay. And there's many different delivery forms. We got the transdermal, we got oral, we got injection, and we have pellets, which is my least favorite. Just putting that one out there.
It's funny as you were saying that about how like we don't have these conversations or there's this stigma around it. It just randomly popped in my head about the whole, and you said bioidentical, which is what triggered it. Was there's so many people as we speak going on, and I'm trying to not get into this conversation, but I just wanted to hit this really quickly. um so many people today are going on GLP-1.
Yes.
GLP-1 is a bioidentical hormone, so why
Yes.
are we more advocating that than we are estrogen and all of the other hormones that make more sense, if that makes any sense? Like I said, I don't want to like
Yes.
deviate and like dive into that, but that is a thing where we're like, oh yeah, sure, give me the GLP-1s, but we're like, oh wait, estrogen, I don't know if I really, and it just doesn't make sense in my head with that, but that's just what popped in my head.
And 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 I'm glad it popped in your head, because I think it's a really good point. And the thing is that a lot of women, if they would actually replenish their estrogen to a certain degree, okay, get the support. That's really what you're doing. You're going to become more metabolically even and stabilized, and you may not need that GLP-1. The other thing, just kind of dovetailing on that, is, I mean, most people in their 60s, moving to the 70s, are in 3 to 4 different pharmaceutical drugs, right?
Oh, yeah. Easily.
Easily. A lot of those could probably be eliminated through HRT. But I do want to put a caveat on here. I always say the HRT is the icing on the cake. It's all the lifestyle and all the other things that also need to be put in place, or we're just putting HRT just like a medication on top of it. Okay. Natural or not natural. So it's not the panacea. It isn't the end all be all. We still need to be doing all the other things. But like I said, I've watched my own clients need the HRT and need to be supported, even though they're doing all the other things in that layered cake correctly. So you can go to these pharmaceuticals, which are not natural. They are not. Okay. For, Prozac, or, whatever you want for anti-anxiety, or a blood pressure medication, or, uh, on painkillers so much of the time because your joints hurt, your hips hurt, all that biphosphonate for your bones. So yeah, you kind of have to pick and choose.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah. So before we wrap everything up, I think I have just a couple more questions. What are some factors that a woman should think through when deciding if HRT feels right for her?
Okay. So one of the first things, let's say that I'm going to go with, let's say she's been in menopause for like 10 years. Okay. And she decides that she wants to go on HRT. I would say go slow and low and slow. Okay. Go low and slow because your receptors are going to be a little bit sleepy. Okay. And be patient. The other thing I mentioned, it's really important to have lab work done to see if we're getting it high enough. Okay. Doctors still like to keep it low, getting it higher enough. So we are protecting all of the things that are happening below the surface. So it's pretty easy to get rid of the symptoms on a very low dose of estrogen and progesterone. Okay. And, but it's the stuff going on below that surface, right? The iceberg is up here. We got below is even bigger. That would be the heart disease, the Alzheimer's, and the bone health, basically, is what we're talking about there. I think I lost my train of thought. I don't know. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, you did. You did.
Okay. Okay.
Some things to consider when going on or deciding if it's right for them. So yeah.
And going back to making sure that you know what this does. And I know cancer is a big one. The big C word, right, is a big one for a lot of women because that was been out there for 20 years. And I just want to remind women that heart disease is the number one killer of postmenopausal women, not cancer. Okay. And that 1 in 3 women who break their hip when they're older will die within the first year of breaking their hip. Okay. It is not because they broke the hip per se. It's just they never recover and they weaken and the UTIs and all of that go with it. So estrogen does not, bioidenticals do not cause cancer. There's not one study that I know. If someone wants to give it to me, I'm more than happy to look at it. But bioidenticals and transdermal do not cause cancer. Now, if you actually are in, the phase where you have cancer, no, I would say that estrogen, and it is a hormone-based cancer, that would not be the time to be taking estrogen. But I think, and they're trying to get clinical trials out there. They're trying to do that. But there are, or randomized trials, but there's a lot of clinical data actually out there that does support, a woman's choice anyway, supports a woman's choice in choosing to either take HRT or not, even after cancer, depending on what her quality of life is. She gets to choose. And I think every woman needs to know that you do get to choose. You do need to educate yourself, but you do ultimately get to choose.
Absolutely. So if a woman, and this will be the last question for HRT, but if a woman is like, okay, I hear what you're saying, I just need some time to really consider it or research it, etc. What are some other things that while she's trying to figure this out that she can do during the season of her life?
Okay. So all the basics, right? So your diet is super important. Your lab work is super important. Your lifestyle, getting sleep, doing things that, Lindsey will help you with. I mean, that's so important. I still need help with that. I do. It's like, really? Making sure your digestive system is working correctly is really important. Look at your environmental toxic exposure is super important. I think those are the layers of the cake that I have there, supporting your adrenal gland, your lifestyle, and all of that. So getting those things in place, maybe taking some supplements that are specific to what you need. And I think I mentioned getting your lab work done. There is, I think I mentioned a type of maca in perimenopause, right? The same company makes a type of maca. Can I tell you the name of the company or
Yeah,
no?
go for it.
Okay.
Go.
It's out of, the brand is called Symphony. And I really like it. I don't know if you know who Deanna Minnick is. She's been a part of the Institute of Functional Medicine for a long time, but she's got so much integrity. This company has so much integrity, and they've done some small, testing, and they have results. And again, this maca it can't turn your ovaries back on. It's not going to happen.
But you know, our sex hormones are also made in our fat cells when we're postmenopausal, mainly, but also still in our adrenals. And so this can help regulate that HPA axis. And they have testing that shows that it can bring up estrogen in postmenopausal women and lower the FSH and also bring up progesterone. So I would say if you're not quite ready to go on HRT, go to that. See if it makes a difference to you. Okay. See if it helps you and do all the other things and get help with that as well. Putting those things in place. Yeah. It's not an all or nothing and it's very individualized. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about perimenopause. Let's shift over to the women who might be tuning in who have already done all of this and now they're actually in the menopausal, transition or beyond. And what are some things that maybe they often still need support around that maybe isn't talked enough about?
Once they're on HRT or once they're in menopause and not on HRT?
Just in general when they're in the postmenopausal state.
Oh, goodness gracious. And this can happen if you're on HRT or not HRT, right? But I see it more if you're not on HRT. I mean, I think debilitating pain in their joints and can be a big issue for a lot of women. Being talked into taking medication is a big one. You need to do your research and probably get a second opinion from someone like Lindsey or me or somebody, that's in your group, in your sphere that can be an advocate for you who knows. Okay. That is really important. And I say that because I know better and I still get intimidated. Okay. I was told to go on a biphosphonate last year and I'm like, what? I barely had a little bit of osteopenia. I'm 68. It's like, and the doctor, it was a phone call.
Yeah.
It's like, she didn't talk about my diet. She didn't talk about my physical activity. She didn't talk about my family history. She didn't talk about my vitamin D levels. She wanted to put me on the biphosphonate. And let me tell you, if I had gone on a biphosphonate, my life in the next 5 years would be very different than what it is now. Okay. We never talked about HRT. Nothing. Okay. We don't know. This is where history is important, ladies. And this is where you need to have your blood work done, preferably in your late 30s, early 40s. So you track where your body is and you can see the differences as your body goes through this big, huge change, right? Who knows? When I had this tiny bit of bone loss, all right? Was it 10 years ago and it's gotten better? Was it, 5 years ago and I've changed my hormone regimen? Is that what you say? The type and the amount that I'm taking. And so has my bone been built up? Who knows? So you don't take it at face value. I have been offered 3 different types of medication in the last 2 years, and I have not taken any of them. Now, I'm not irresponsible, right? I look at other things and go, okay, Cindy, you need to support this and this. So medications are strong. They will usually deplete your body of something else. So it's blocking something off. So if you decide to take that medication, you need to know what nutrients, because you're usually blocking a nutrient of some sort, what nutrients you need to supplement with. So don't take it lightly. Don't take it lightly. So whether you're on your HRT or not HRT, whatever it is, if you are in pain, if you're not able to live your life in a way that you want to live your life, then forget your manicure and your pedicure, okay? I'm sorry, and your hair color, whatever it is, and take that money and spend it on something that will really make a difference in your quality of life now until the end of time. I just got on my soapbox, didn't I?
Fine. And we can actually we can piggyback on that and if you can speak to like what vitality at that stage of life should actually look and feel like what is that? Because I know even people personally in my life, once they hit a certain age, they're like, oh, well, there's nothing I can do now. This is just how it is. Or they kind of feel like, oh, I'm just getting old. Like this just happens because I'm getting old. It's a very defeatist kind of
It
attitude. But
is.
then I've seen a lot of women, even like yourself, who are also in groups that I'm in, who are, in their mid 70s and they're living life so big. And it's
They
like,
are.
they're two different paths that were
Yes.
chosen, and it's mind-blowing to me. So if you can speak on that, like what vitality actually exists after you come out of the menopausal state, like go for it.
Yeah. We have the capacity to be vital for a very, very long time. I'm 68. I'm not 70 yet, but I feel very vital. I look around at some of my contemporaries and they are not, okay? They are not moving around. They are not living the way that they want to live. And it is very possible. I want to say for everybody, okay? You just need to find the right formula for you and don't give up. Now, the problem is, Lindsey, and I get this, all right? I understand it because, we kind of live it. I mean, I did feel a shift for me at right around COVID. So whether it was COVID or because I got that 2 or 3 times, um, or it was just kind of shifting over. But I would say that I kind of felt a shift internally, physically, and mentally and emotionally right around 63, 64. That was me. Okay. Now, for other women, especially if you have been put on medication, let's say, in your 50s, right? There's going to be kind of like a frog in boiling water. It just slowly happens. You don't even realize how much you've lost. And I see that. And then you become so tired and exhausted. Even the things that you know that you should be doing, or I don't like the word should, but it is kind of a should, that you want to be doing for yourselves. You don't even have the ability, okay? The gumption to do it. You give up. So it's not necessarily your fault, but I want women to know that there are other options. You're probably going to need someone to take you by the hand and help you to that. And even though I say that, HRT is the icing on the cake, we have to have all these other things. Sometimes, and I know some practitioners believe, if they're real purists, they believe that you need to have all these other things going first before you do the HRT. Sometimes we need to put some HRT in there in order to get the taste buds and the appetite underneath control, in order to start getting the insulin down, in order to start making these things happen. And then we work on the other. Okay. So it's like, don't give up. There is a way out. And, it's just, if you're really feeling that you can't even find the way out, you need to hold your hand out and find someone that you resonate with who can help you.
Percent. So we kind of touched on this before, but there is so much information out there, it can actually be overwhelming. So
Yeah.
where would you encourage her to go first, or where to begin?
There's a couple practitioners that I really like,
Okay.
that I think do a really good job. Dr. Felice Gersh. I know she's in at least her mid 70s. She's been around a long time. And do you know her?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
We talked about this.
We did? I forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love Dr. Felice Gersh. She's on YouTube. She's got great information. I don't agree with her 100%, but I agree with her like most of the time. So you're going to get really good information. There is a good podcast called The Hormone Solution by Karen Martell. She does an excellent job interviewing people. She knows her stuff. Highly, highly recommend her. There's a book called Estrogen Matters. And for anyone who's worried about cancer or has had cancer in the family. Oh, by the way, just because you've had cancer in your family does not mean you're going to get cancer, does not preclude you from getting on HRT. Yeah. Okay. Doctors, it's like, ugh. Okay. So that's a really good one. I think those three are really good resources. I think a good video, just an overview on, I call it pulling the curtain back on HRT. So it's a really good overview on the history of HRT, talking about cancer a little bit, talking about the different types of HRT. So it's a little over an hour. And I just think it's a good overview, a good place to start. And I'm on YouTube. Yeah.
Good.
So I think those are good resources.
Yeah, I think you touched all of it. So if you like to read, there's something. If you want to watch YouTube, there's something. And if you want to listen to a podcast, there's something. I think you hit all the groups there with that. That's perfect. So Cindy, for the woman listening who wants to better understand her labs and feel more informed during either the perimenopause or menopausal season, can you share where she can start with you and connect with you?
Yes. The best way to start with me and connect with me would be to go to my website, and there's an annoying pop-up that comes up, and you can click there and book a 20-minute with me and just let me know what it is that you are concerned about, what you need help with, and we can see whether or not we're a match. So that's one way. You can see what I offer. I offer, 4 different ways of working with me. One is through a course, and it's an 8-week course, and we go through everything that I've talked about here. It's done online. We have a community. We meet every week. You get to ask all your questions, and I absolutely love it. I love working with my women. I love the support that they give each other. So that's on there as well. I do have my Instagram, and that's Cindy, Cindy _ DuPuie, DUPUIE. And there's I think I give pretty good information. It's not just on perimenopause and menopause. I talk about all different sorts of health. And then I got my YouTube channel as well. And then you've got your, the lab checklist as well, which is a great way to start.
Awesome. So we will put all of that in the show notes so you guys can pop down there and see all of the lovely resources. Lots of good resources mentioned in this episode. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you so much for being here, Cindy, and for joining us for this conversation. This is the final episode in our now 8 weeks series of going from survival to sovereignty. So I'm glad that you were like the end cap of this series. It like fits perfectly. So if you guys haven't checked out the previous, what would be 7 episodes, I encourage you to go back and do so. Every single one is just one more step in that transition, like I said, from survival to sovereignty. And then today you guys got information on labs and what your future can look like. So if this episode supported you, then make sure you subscribe, make sure you share it with a woman who may need it, and let us know what stood out to you most in the comments below. And I will see you guys on the next one.